Maria's alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning, just like it had for the past 12 years. She didn't need the alarm anymore, really. Her body just knew when it was time to wake up. She got dressed in the dark, careful not to wake her daughter sleeping in the next room, and headed out into the quiet streets. The bus ride to Steinway Concert Hall took 40 minutes. Maria liked this time of day when the city was still sleeping. She could think. She could remember. Sometimes she'd hum quietly to herself, old melodies from another lifetime that seemed to belong to someone else now. By 6 in the morning, she was pushing her cleaning cart through the grand entrance of the concert hall. The place was beautiful, even after seeing it thousands of times. High ceilings with crystal chandeliers, marble floors that reflected the light like mirrors, and walls decorated with portraits of famous musicians who had performed there over the years. But the real treasure was in the main hall. The grand piano sat in the center of the stage, black and gleaming under the spotlight that was always left on. It was a Steinway, worth more money than Maria would make in 10 years of cleaning, maybe 20 years. She started her routine the same way she always did. First the lobby, then the backstage area. She'd save the main hall for last because that's where she could work slowly, carefully, and sometimes if she was alone she'd stop and just look at that piano. This week was special, though. The hall was hosting the Young Virtuosos competition, and for the past 3 weeks, talented young pianists had been coming in to practice. Maria had heard them all. Some were good, some were amazing, and some, well, they had the technical skill but seemed to be missing something she couldn't quite name. She was wiping down the mirrors in the backstage hallway when she heard it. Someone was already here playing the piano. That was unusual. Most musicians didn't arrive until 9 or 10 in the morning. Maria pushed her cart quietly toward the main hall and peeked through the doorway. A young woman sat at the piano, maybe 22 or 23 years old. She had long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and was wearing expensive-looking athletic clothes, the kind that cost more than Maria's weekly grocery budget. Her fingers moved across the keys with incredible speed and precision, but even Maria, who hadn't played seriously in decades, could hear it. The notes were perfect, but they felt cold somehow, like reading words without understanding what they meant. The young woman stopped abruptly and slammed her hands down on the keys in frustration. The harsh sound echoed through the empty hall. Maria winced but stayed quiet, continuing to dust the seats in the back rows. The pianist pulled out her phone and made a call. Her voice carried in the acoustics of the hall, even though she probably thought no one could hear her. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she said into the phone. "The judges keep saying I need more emotion, more feeling. But I'm playing the notes exactly as written. What more do they want?" There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "Yes, I know the competition is in 3 days. I'm stressed enough without you reminding me." Another pause. "The pressure is killing me. Honestly, at this rate, even the cleaning lady could probably play better than me." She laughed at her own joke, but it was a bitter sound, not really funny at all. Maria's hands stopped moving. She stood very still, holding her dustcloth, staring at a spot on the wall. The words hung in the air like smoke. The young woman ended her call and went back to playing, but only for a few more minutes. Then she gathered her sheet music, stuffed it into an expensive leather bag, and walked out of the hall without even glancing in Maria's direction. The silence that followed felt heavy. Maria slowly walked down the aisle toward the stage. Her cartwheels squeaked slightly, the only sound in the vast space. She climbed the 3 steps to the stage and stood next to the piano. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished black surface. A woman in her late 40s with tired eyes and hands that showed the years of hard work. She wore a simple gray uniform with her name embroidered on the pocket. Her dark hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back in a practical bun. She reached out and touched the piano, just one finger on the smooth wood. It was cool under her touch. Even the cleaning lady could probably play better than me. Maria pulled her hand back as if the piano had burned her. She shook her head and returned to her cart. She had work to do. Floors to mop, bathrooms to clean, trash to empty. That was her life now, and there was no point in thinking about anything else. But for the rest of the morning as she worked, she couldn't get those words out of her head, and she couldn't stop her fingers from moving slightly, pressing invisible keys, playing invisible music that only she could hear. By noon, the hall started filling with people. More young musicians arrived to practice. Teachers came to coach their students. The competition organizers rushed around with clipboards, checking and rechecking every detail. Maria stayed out of everyone's way, as she always did. She'd learned years ago how to be invisible. People looked through her, not at her. She was part of the background, like the chairs or the curtains, necessary but unnoticed. She saw the young pianist return in the afternoon, this time with an older man who was probably her teacher. They talked intensely before she sat down to play again. Maria was cleaning the windows in the upper balcony and could see them clearly from above. The teacher kept stopping the young woman, making her replay sections over and over. "More feeling, Alexandra," he kept saying. "The notes are perfect, but where's your heart? Where's the story you're trying to tell?" So her name was Alexandra. Maria watched as the young woman's frustration grew with each correction. Finally, Alexandra stood up from the piano bench so quickly it almost fell over. "I can't do this anymore today," she said. "I need a break." She left again, and her teacher sighed deeply, shaking his head as he followed her out. Maria finished the windows and started making her way down from the balcony. As she passed through the main hall one more time before leaving for the day, she paused. The stage was empty. The piano sat there waiting. She looked around. No one was watching. Everyone was in the lobby or the practice rooms. She had maybe 2 minutes before someone would come back. Maria walked to the stage. Her heart was beating fast, which was silly. She was just going to touch it. That's all. Just touch the keys for a second. She sat on the bench. Her cleaning uniform felt out of place in this elegant setting. Her rough, worn hands hovered over the keys. She pressed one note, just one, middle C. The sound rang out pure and clear. And suddenly, she was 17 again, in a different concert hall in a different country, in a different life, when the whole world was spread out before her like an open book, and she could be anything, do anything, become anything. "Excuse me, can I help you?" Maria jumped up from the bench as if she'd been caught stealing. A young man with a staff badge was looking at her with confusion. "Sorry, so sorry," Maria said quickly in her accented English. "I was just cleaning, making sure it was dust-free." She hurried off the stage, grabbed her cart, and pushed it toward the back exit. Her face felt hot with embarrassment. But as she left the building and started her long commute home, her fingers were still moving. Playing music that no one could hear. Music that lived only in her memory and in the quiet, secret places of her heart. That night, she would go home to her small apartment. She would make dinner for her daughter. She would help with homework. She would do laundry and prepare for another early morning. But first, just for a moment, she would uncover the old piano in the corner of her living room, and she would let her fingers remember what they had once known so well. What Alexandra didn't know, what no one in that beautiful concert hall knew, was that the cleaning lady had a story too. And sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest songs inside them, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Maria stared out the window, watching the city blur past, but she wasn't really seeing any of it. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere far away and long ago. Her daughter Carmen was already home when Maria opened the door to their small apartment. The girl was 16, sitting at the kitchen table with her schoolbook spread out everywhere. "Hi, Mom," Carmen said without looking up. "There's leftover rice in the fridge if you're hungry." "Thanks, Mija." Maria set down her bag and kicked off her shoes. Her feet ached. They always did after a full day of cleaning. The apartment was tiny but clean. One bedroom that Carmen used, and Maria slept on the couch in the living room. A small kitchen with appliances that were older than Carmen, and in the corner, covered with a faded cloth, was the upright piano. Carmen followed her mother's gaze. "You've been looking at it a lot lately." "Have I?" Maria tried to sound casual. "Yeah, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetie. Just tired." Maria smiled and went to start dinner. But that night, after Carmen went to bed, Maria found herself standing in front of the piano again. She hadn't planned to. Her feet just carried her there, like they had a mind of their own. She pulled off the cloth slowly. Dust floated in the air, caught in the light from the street lamp outside. The piano was old, scarred, nothing like the beautiful Steinway at the concert hall. But when she sat down and touched the keys, it felt like greeting an old friend. Her fingers found a simple melody, something soft, something that wouldn't wake Carmen. The sound was tinny compared to the grand piano she used to play. and some of the keys stuck a little, but it didn't matter. As she played, the memories came flooding back. Not just images, but feelings. The texture of them. The weight of them. She was 7 years old, living in Mexico City. Her mother worked as a seamstress, her father as a mechanic. They didn't have much money, but they had dreams for their daughter. One day, Maria's elementary school music teacher called her parents in for a meeting. "Your daughter has a gift," the teacher said. "A real gift. I've been teaching for 30 years and I've never heard a child play like this." Her parents looked at each other. They couldn't afford private lessons. They couldn't even afford a piano. But the teacher knew someone who knew someone, and somehow Maria started taking lessons with a retired concert pianist who lived 3 bus rides away. The woman taught Maria for free, saying it would be a crime against music not to. Maria was 9 when she first performed in public. A small recital for the teacher's students. She wore a dress her mother had stayed up all night making. Her hands shook so badly she thought she wouldn't be able to play. But the moment her fingers touched the keys, everything else disappeared. There was only the music. By the time she was 12, she was performing in real concerts. By 14, she'd won 3 national competitions. By 16, she was being called a prodigy, the pride of her neighborhood, the girl who was going to make it out, make something of herself, put their whole community on the map. The National Conservatory gave her a full scholarship. Master teachers fought over who would coach her. International competitions sent her invitations. And then, the biggest opportunity of all, a full scholarship to Juilliard in New York City, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. She was 17, 2 months away from her graduation recital, 1 month away from flying to New York to start her new life, when her father collapsed at work. Maria's fingers stumbled on the keys, hitting a wrong note. The sound brought her back to the present, to her tiny apartment, to the reality of now. She closed her eyes and kept playing, softer now. The diagnosis was a heart condition, serious. He needed surgery, medication, ongoing care, the kind of care that cost money they didn't have. Mexico's public health system had long waiting lists, and the doctors said he needed treatment soon. Not in 6 months. Not in a year. Soon. Maria's mother worked extra shifts. They borrowed money from relatives. They sold everything they could sell. It wasn't enough. One night, Maria's mother sat her down at their kitchen table. "You should still go to Juilliard," she said, but her eyes were red from crying. "Your father would want you to go. He'll be okay. We'll figure something out." But Maria knew the truth. She saw it in her mother's face, heard it in her father's labored breathing from the other room, felt it in the heavy silence that filled their home. She had a choice. She could get on that plane to New York, chase her dream, become the pianist everyone expected her to be. Or she could stay, help her family survive, and let go of everything she'd worked for. People told her she was crazy. Her teachers begged her to reconsider. "You're throwing away a gift," they said. "You're wasting your talent. Opportunities like this don't come twice." But when she looked at her father, so weak in his hospital bed, when she saw her mother's exhausted face, the choice wasn't really a choice at all. She wrote a letter to Juilliard declining the scholarship. She wrote to the conservatory withdrawing from her program. And then she started looking for ways to help her family. A friend of a friend knew someone in the United States who could help her get a work visa. It took 6 months to arrange. 6 months of watching her father get sicker, of working odd jobs to pay for his medicine, of feeling her dreams slip further and further away. When she finally made it to the United States, she was 18. She cleaned houses, worked in restaurants, sent every penny home. The work was hard and the pay was terrible. But slowly, very slowly, her father got better. By the time he recovered enough to work again, 2 years had passed. Maria was 20. Her English was better, but her piano skills were rusty. And more importantly, she'd missed her window. The competitions had age limits. The scholarships were gone. The teachers who'd been so excited about her prodigy student had moved on to other prodigies, other students, other dreams. She told herself she'd go back to music someday. When things settled down, when she saved enough money, when the time was right, but life had other plans. At 22, she met Carlos at the restaurant where she worked. He was kind and funny and didn't mind that she worked long hours. They got married quickly, too quickly maybe, but she was tired of being alone in a foreign country. Carmen was born a year later. And for a while, Maria thought maybe this was her new dream, being a mother, having a family, building a life. But Carlos left when Carmen was 3. Just disappeared one day, leaving a note saying he couldn't handle the responsibility. Maria never heard from him again, so it was just the two of them, a single mother and a baby, trying to make it in a country that still felt foreign. Maria worked 3 cleaning jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and slowly, the piano became just another piece of furniture in the corner. Something from her old life. Something that belonged to a different person. Maria stopped playing and opened her eyes. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. She looked so different from that 17-year-old girl with stars in her eyes and music in her soul. She ran her hands over the piano keys one more time, not pressing down, just feeling them. "Mom?" Maria turned. Carmen stood in the doorway in her pajamas, squinting in the dim light. "Did I wake you?" "I'm sorry, sweetie." "It's okay." Carmen walked over and sat next to her mother on the piano bench. "I didn't know you could play. I used to. A long time ago? You're really good. Why don't you play more?" Maria looked at her daughter's curious face. How could she explain it? How could she put into words all the complicated feelings, the sacrifice, the loss, the love, the regret, the acceptance? "Life got busy," she finally said. Other things became more important. Carmen leaned her head on Maria's shoulder. "Will you teach me sometime?" "Maybe, if you want to learn." They sat there together in the quiet apartment, mother and daughter, in front of the old piano that held so many untold stories. The next morning, Maria woke up even earlier than usual. She made breakfast for Carmen, packed her lunch, made sure she had everything for school. Then she headed out into the dark morning for another day of cleaning. But something felt different. That conversation with Carmen had stirred something inside her. Or maybe it was Alexandra's words from the day before. Or maybe it was just time. When Maria arrived at the concert hall, she could hear music before she even entered the building. Someone was practicing early again. As she pushed her cart through the lobby, she recognized the sound. It was Alexandra. The young woman was playing the same piece from yesterday, but if anything, it sounded even more mechanical than before. Maria could hear the frustration in the way she attacked the keys, the anger in the louder passages. Maria started her cleaning routine, but she couldn't stop listening. And the more she listened, the more she understood what was missing. It wasn't about the notes. Alexandra was playing the notes perfectly, but she was playing them like math problems, like equations to solve, like obstacles to overcome. She wasn't playing them like life. Music wasn't about perfection. It was about truth, about taking all the messy, complicated, painful, beautiful parts of being human and turning them into sound. You couldn't fake that. You couldn't learn it from a teacher or a book. You had to live it. Maria thought about her own life. The dreams she'd given up. The sacrifices she'd made. The lonely nights. The exhaustion, the fear. The love for her daughter that was stronger than anything. The ache for something lost. The quiet pride in survival. All of that was music too. Maybe not the kind that won competitions or filled concert halls. But it was real. It was true. And it was hers. The morning of the competition arrived with unusual warmth for late autumn. Maria got to the concert hall earlier than normal, around 5 in the morning. The place needed to be spotless before the audience started arriving at noon. She worked quickly but carefully, making sure every surface gleamed. The organizers had been very clear about how important this event was. Judges from across the country, talent scouts, music school representatives, wealthy donors who funded scholarships. Even some local news stations were sending camera crews. By 8 o'clock, other staff members started arriving. The event coordinator, a thin woman named Patricia who always seemed stressed, rushed around with her clipboard checking and rechecking everything. "Maria, make sure the stage is perfect," Patricia said without really looking at her. "Not a speck of dust anywhere. This needs to be flawless." "Yes, ma'am." Maria spent extra time on the stage polishing the piano until it reflected the lights like a mirror. She arranged the flowers in their vases, making sure they looked natural. She checked every seat in the house, wiping down the armrests, making sure there was nothing that would distract from the performances. Around 10, the young musicians started showing up. Maria recognized most of them from their practice sessions over the past few weeks. They came in fancy clothes, carrying expensive instrument cases, surrounded by anxious parents and stern-looking teachers. She saw Alexandra arrive with an older couple who must have been her parents. Her mother wore a designer suit and kept fussing with Alexandra's hair. Her father checked his expensive watch every few minutes and made phone calls in hushed, important-sounding tones. Alexandra looked terrified. Her face was pale and her hands shook as she clutched her sheet music. When she thought no one was looking, Maria saw her close her eyes and take deep breaths like she was trying not to panic. Maria understood that feeling. The pressure, the weight of expectations, the fear of disappointing everyone who believed in you. The difference was that Alexandra was afraid of failing at something she'd been given every opportunity to succeed at. Maria had been afraid of never getting the opportunity at all. By 11:30, Maria's work was done. She was supposed to clock out and leave, but something made her stay. She told herself she was just curious about the competition. That was all. She found a spot in the very back row of the upper balcony where the staff sometimes sat during events. From up here, she could see everything without being noticed. The hall below filled with people, families dressed in their finest clothes. The judges took their seats at a special table near the front. Photographers positioned their cameras. The competition started at noon sharp. The format was simple. Each performer had 20 minutes to play their chosen piece. There were 12 competitors in all. The judges would deliberate and announce the winner at the end. The first performer was a young man, maybe 19, who played Bach. He was technically skilled but visibly nervous. He made a few mistakes, got flustered, and rushed through the final movement. The applause was polite. The second performer, a woman in her early 20s, played Beethoven. She was better, more confident, but Maria could tell she'd been overcoached. Every movement looked rehearsed, planned. There was no spontaneity, no surprise, no real joy in the playing. One by one they came. Some were good, some were quite talented. But Maria kept waiting to hear something that would make her heart stop. Something that would transport her, something that would make her forget where she was and lose herself completely in the music. It didn't come. The seventh performer was a boy who couldn't have been more than 17. He played Chopin, and for a moment Maria leaned forward. This one had potential, real potential. He understood the emotional landscape of the piece. But halfway through, his nerves got the better of him. His fingers stumbled, he lost his place, and he had to stop and start over. The audience whispered sympathetically, but the damage was done. Maria felt for him. She knew how cruel a moment of weakness could be when everything was riding on perfection. Alexandra was scheduled to perform 10th. As the competition wore on, Maria watched her sitting in the front row, getting more and more tense. She kept flexing her fingers, rolling her shoulders, whispering to herself. When the 9th performer finished, there was a brief pause. The audience rustled. Programs flipped. Someone coughed. Then Patricia walked onto the stage and announced, "Our next performer is Alexandra Chen, who will be playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, third movement." The audience applauded as Alexandra walked onto the stage. She wore a deep blue dress that probably cost more than Maria made in a month. Her hair was perfectly styled. Everything about her appearance was polished, professional, ready, but Maria could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes. Alexandra sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The hall fell silent, and then she began to play. Rachmaninoff is not an easy composer. His music demands both technical brilliance and deep emotional understanding. It's passionate, dramatic, powerful. It requires the pianist to be vulnerable, to pour themselves into every note. Alexandra's technique was flawless. Her fingers flew across the keys with incredible speed and precision. She didn't miss a single note. Every dynamic was exactly as written. Every tempo change was perfectly timed, but something was missing. Maria closed her eyes and just listened. The notes were all there, but they felt hollow. It was like watching someone go through the motions of a conversation without actually saying anything meaningful. The words were correct, but there was no soul behind them. She was playing it safe, playing it perfect, playing it exactly as she'd been taught. But she wasn't playing it like she meant it. The piece built to its dramatic conclusion. The final chords rang out powerfully through the hall. Alexandra lifted her hands from the keys and stood to bow. The applause came immediately, but Maria noticed it wasn't overwhelming. It was appreciative but not enthusiastic. The kind of applause that said, "That was very good, but not, that was extraordinary." Alexandra walked off stage with her head held high, but Maria saw the disappointment in her eyes. She knew she hadn't won. Maybe she didn't even know why, but she felt it. As Alexandra passed through the side exit, she glanced up at the upper balcony. For just a second, her eyes met Maria's. There was a flicker of recognition, maybe even a hint of that bitter smirk from days before when she'd joked about the cleaning lady. Then she was gone, and the next performer was being announced. The final 2 performances came and went. One was mediocre, the other slightly better than average. When the last note faded and the last applause died down, Patricia returned to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, our judges will now take a 30-minute intermission to deliberate. Please feel free to stretch your legs, visit the lobby, and return at 2:30 for the announcement of our winners. The hall erupted into conversation. People stood, gathered in groups, debated which performance they'd liked best. Maria stayed in her seat thinking. She was about to leave, to slip out the back before anyone noticed she'd been there, when she heard footsteps on the balcony stairs. An elderly man appeared at the top. He was distinguished looking, probably in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit and had a name tag that identified him as one of the judges, Dr. James Sullivan. He walked slowly along the balcony, looking out over the hall below, and didn't seem to notice Maria at first. She started to gather her things quietly, not wanting to intrude. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said suddenly, still looking down at the stage. "The way the light hits that piano, like it's the only thing that matters in the whole world." Maria wasn't sure if he was talking to her or to himself. She stayed quiet. He turned and looked at her directly. "You were crying. I'm sorry." "During one of the performances." "I saw you from down there." He pointed to the judges' table. "You had tears in your eyes." Maria felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to intrude on the competition. I was just, you work here, it wasn't a question." "Yes, sir. I cleaned the hall." He nodded slowly, studying her face with interest. "Tell me something. Which performance moved you?" "I don't think my opinion matters much, sir." "Humor me." Maria hesitated. She could leave. She should leave. This man was one of the judges. She was just the cleaning lady. Why would he care what she thought? But something in his face was genuine. He really wanted to know. "The young man who played Chopin," she said quietly. "The one who had to start over. Number 7. Why him?" "Because for a moment before his nerves got to him, I could hear his heart in the music. He wasn't just playing notes. He was trying to say something. Tell a story. Share something real." Dr. Sullivan smiled, a warm, knowing smile. "You understand music. I used to play. A long time ago." "Used to?" Maria looked down at her hands, rough and worn from years of work. "Life happened." He was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised her. "Would you play something for me?" "Sir?" "The piano downstairs." "Would you play something? Just a few minutes. I'd like to hear you." Maria's heart started racing. "I don't think that's appropriate. The competition is on a break. The stage is empty. And I'm genuinely curious." He smiled gently. "Please, an old man's request." Every logical part of Maria's brain screamed no. She was wearing her cleaning uniform. Her hands weren't ready. She hadn't played seriously in decades. What if she embarrassed herself? What if someone saw? But there was something else too. A pull she couldn't quite explain. A voice that whispered, "When will you get another chance?" She thought about Carmen asking to learn piano. She thought about Alexandra's hollow performance. She thought about all those years of silence, of keeping this part of herself locked away like a shameful secret. "Just something short," Dr. Sullivan said. "Whatever you'd like." Maria looked at him, at his kind face and patient eyes, and she made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Just something short." Maria's legs felt shaky as she followed Dr. Sullivan down from the balcony. The main hall was still full of people on their intermission break. Small groups chatted in the aisles. Parents consoled nervous performers. Some people had gone to the lobby for refreshments. Nobody paid attention to the elderly judge and the cleaning woman making their way toward the stage. As they got closer, Maria's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. The grand piano sat there under the lights waiting. She'd cleaned around it hundreds of times, touched it briefly that one morning, but now she was actually going to play it, in front of people. After 30 years, what was she thinking? "Having second thoughts?" Dr. Sullivan asked gently. Many of them, Maria admitted. He chuckled. That's how you know it matters. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be nervous. They reached the stage steps. Maria paused, looking up at the platform that suddenly seemed much higher than it had when she was mopping it this morning. Dr. Sullivan climbed the steps first, then offered his hand to help her up. The gesture was so kind, so gentlemanly, that it gave her courage. As she stepped onto the stage, the conversations in the hall began to quiet. People noticed. A judge and a cleaning woman on stage during the break. This was unusual. Curious faces turned toward them. Maria felt hundreds of eyes on her. Her face burned with embarrassment. Her uniform, so practical and invisible during her work, suddenly felt like a spotlight pointing out everything she wasn't. She wasn't a competitor. She wasn't dressed elegantly. She wasn't young or polished or prepared. She almost turned around and walked off. But Dr. Sullivan gestured toward the piano bench with such expectant kindness that her feet kept moving. She sat down slowly. The bench was still warm from Alexandra's performance. Her hands hovered over the keys. They were shaking. The hall had grown noticeably quieter now. More people were watching, confused about what was happening. Some looked amused. A few looked annoyed that their intermission was being interrupted. Maria saw Alexandra standing near the front, her face a mixture of confusion and something that might have been recognition. She whispered something to her mother. "Whenever you're ready," Dr. Sullivan said softly, standing beside the piano. "No pressure. Just play what you feel." Maria closed her eyes. She tried to block out the audience, the judgment, the fear. She tried to go back to that place inside herself where music lived. That place she'd locked away for so many years because it hurt too much to visit. She thought about her father in that hospital bed, telling her to go to Juilliard anyway, even though they both knew they needed her. She thought about her mother's exhausted face after working triple shifts. She thought about holding baby Carmen for the first time, alone in a hospital room, terrified but full of love. She thought about sacrifice, about dreams deferred, about quiet strength, about the kind of courage that nobody applauds because nobody sees it. And then her hands found the keys. She started with Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. She chose it without thinking, letting her fingers decide. It was a piece she'd played for her final conservatory recital, the one that never happened. She'd practiced it for months, perfecting every note, preparing to show the world what she could do. Now, 30 years later, her fingers remembered. The first notes came out tentative, rusty. Her technique wasn't what it used to be. She hit a wrong note in the second measure and winced, but she kept going, and something strange happened. As she played, the rust began to fall away. The years of silence began to crack. Muscle memory kicked in, and her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget. But it wasn't just technical memory. It was emotional memory, too. This time she wasn't playing for judges or scholarships or to prove something. She wasn't playing to win or impress or fulfill anyone's expectations. She was playing because this was her story, and stories need to be told. The piece moved through its gentle opening into more turbulent waters. The tempo increased. The dynamics grew. Maria's fingers flew across the keys, and she wasn't thinking anymore. She was just feeling. Every note carried weight. The opening theme spoke of hope and innocence. The dramatic middle section held all the chaos and struggle of life falling apart. The yearning melodies sang of loss, of things that could have been, of roads not taken. But there was something else, too. Something that hadn't been there when she was 17. Back then, she could play the notes, but she hadn't lived enough to understand what they meant. Now she understood. Now she had earned the right to play this music. The hall had gone completely silent. Even the people who had been chatting in the back stopped talking. Someone in the third row was crying quietly. Maria didn't see any of it. Her eyes were closed. She was somewhere else, somewhere beyond the concert hall, beyond the audience, beyond everything but the music. She played the pain of giving up her dreams, the loneliness of immigrating to a foreign country, the exhaustion of working 3 jobs while raising a baby alone, the quiet moments of joy when Carmen laughed, the pride of paying bills on time, the dignity of hard work, the love that kept going even when everything else fell apart. This wasn't music for competitions. This was music for survival, for resistance, for refusing to let life break you even when it tries, for finding beauty in unexpected places, for mothers who sacrifice everything and never get thanked, For dreams that die but somehow leave seeds that might grow into something else, something different, something just as valuable. The piece built toward its dramatic climax. Maria's whole body was engaged now, swaying with the music, her face showing every emotion the notes demanded. She hit the powerful chords with strength she didn't know her tired hands still had. And then, the resolution. The return to the opening theme, but transformed, changed by everything that came before, wiser, sadder, but somehow still beautiful, still full of grace. The final notes rang out in the silent hall. Maria held them, letting them fade naturally, not rushing. When the last vibration finally disappeared into silence, she lifted her hands from the keys. She opened her eyes. The silence continued for what felt like forever. Maria sat frozen on the bench, suddenly aware again of where she was, what she'd just done. Had it been terrible? Had she embarrassed herself? She was afraid to look at the audience. Then Dr. Sullivan started clapping, slowly at first, standing right beside the piano, then louder, and suddenly the entire hall erupted. People stood up. The applause thundered. Someone in the back whistled. Maria saw faces in the audience streaming with tears. Even some of the other judges at their table were on their feet, applauding. She couldn't process what was happening. This couldn't be real. She was the cleaning lady. She was nobody. This applause was for someone else, but it continued. Wave after wave of it. Some people were shouting, "Brava." The ovation went on and on. Maria looked out into the audience and found Alexandra. The young woman was standing, clapping, with tears running down her face. Her perfect makeup was ruined. Her mother was trying to get her to sit down, looking confused and slightly scandalized that the help was receiving such attention. But Alexandra didn't sit. She kept clapping, kept crying, and mouthed two words that Maria could read clearly across the distance. "I'm sorry." Maria felt her own tears starting. She stood up from the bench on shaky legs and bowed slightly, not like a performer, but like someone who was grateful and overwhelmed and didn't quite know what to do with all this emotion. The applause finally began to subside. People slowly sat down, though many continued wiping their eyes. The energy in the hall had completely changed. Something significant had happened, and everyone felt it, even if they couldn't quite name it. Patricia, the event coordinator, appeared at the edge of the stage looking absolutely panicked. She clearly had no idea how to handle this situation. This wasn't on her clipboard. This wasn't part of the schedule. Dr. Sullivan helped Maria off the stage. As her foot touched the ground level, people nearby reached out to touch her arm, to say something kind. She heard fragments of praise, wonder, questions about who she was and where she'd trained. She was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "Breathe," Dr. Sullivan said quietly. "Just breathe." "I don't understand what just happened," Maria whispered. "You shared the truth," he said simply. "That's what happened. Most of these young musicians, they're very talented, but they're still learning that music isn't about playing notes correctly. It's about being honest, about being human." You reminded everyone what that sounds like. Alexandra appeared in front of them, her mascara-streaked face somehow making her look younger, more real than her polished performance face had. "Please," she said to Maria, "can I talk to you?" Her parents were right behind her, looking disapproving. Her mother opened her mouth to say something, probably to pull Alexandra away from this inappropriate situation. But Alexandra held up her hand. "Mom, please, just give me a minute." The parents stepped back, though they watched closely. Alexandra looked at Maria with red, honest eyes. "I said something terrible the other day. About you? About the cleaning lady playing better than me. I was frustrated and mean and stupid." "You didn't know," Maria said softly. "That's not an excuse. I've been so focused on winning, on being perfect, on not disappointing anyone, that I forgot why I started playing in the first place." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I forgot that music is supposed to mean something. You just showed me that. The way you played, it was like you were telling your whole life story in that piece. In a way, I was." "How do I do that?" Alexandra asked desperately. "How do I play like that? My teachers keep telling me to have more emotion, more feeling, but I don't know how. I practice and practice, and it still comes out wrong." Maria took both of Alexandra's hands in her own rough ones. She looked at this young woman with her expensive dress and her privileged life and her competition stress, and saw something that surprised her. She saw herself at 17. Not the circumstances, but the fear, the pressure. The weight of other people's expectations. You can't learn it from practicing, Maria said gently. You learn it from living. From failing. From losing things you love. From making hard choices. From being hurt and healing. From loving people. From being afraid and doing things anyway. Alexandra nodded slowly, taking in Maria's words like they were precious and rare. But I don't have that yet. I'm only 22. I haven't lived enough. Does that mean I can't be a real musician until I'm older? Maria smiled. No, mija. It means you need to play your truth, not mine. You're young. Play like a young person. Play your nervousness. Play your pressure. Play your fear of disappointing people. Play the weight of expectations. That's real too. That's honest. Don't try to play emotions you haven't felt yet. Play the ones you're feeling right now. Something shifted in Alexandra's face. Understanding. Relief, maybe, like she'd been given permission to be exactly who she was instead of pretending to be someone else. Thank you, she whispered, squeezing Maria's hands. I'll never forget this. Patricia appeared again, looking frazzled. We need to resume the competition. The judges need to deliberate and announce the winner. Dr. Sullivan nodded. Of course. Though I think the deliberation just got more interesting. He winked at Maria. As people started returning to their seats, Maria slipped away toward the back of the hall. She wanted to disappear, to process what had just happened in private. But Dr. Sullivan caught up with her before she could leave. Maria, wait. She turned. He was slightly out of breath from hurrying. I need your contact information. Your phone number, email, whatever you have. Sir, I don't think... Please, this isn't charity and it's not pity. What I just witnessed was extraordinary. That kind of musicianship is rare and it should be shared. He pulled out his phone. I'm connected with several music institutions in the city. I know people who run community music programs who need teachers, who could use someone with your talent and your story. Maria felt overwhelmed. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I have a daughter to take care of, I know. And I'm not asking you to quit your job or abandon your life. I'm just asking for your number so I can make a few phone calls on your behalf. What you do with the opportunities is up to you. She hesitated, but something in his sincere face convinced her. She gave him her phone number, half expecting nothing to come of it. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Maria found her spot in the back again as the judges deliberated. She watched them through the window of their private room, deep in discussion. Dr. Sullivan seemed to be doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically. When they finally returned to announce the winners, Patricia took the stage with her clipboard. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. The judges have reached their decision. She announced third place first, the young man who had played Bach, the nervous one from the beginning. He looked relieved just to place at all. Second place goes to Alexandra Chen. The audience applauded warmly. Alexandra walked on stage with grace, accepted her certificate and small scholarship prize. But Maria noticed something different about her. She wasn't devastated like someone who'd lost. She actually looked peaceful. She caught Maria's eye from the stage and smiled. A real smile, not the polished performance smile from before. First place went to a woman who had performed Liszt. She was talented, no question. She deserved the win. The audience applauded enthusiastically. But as Maria slipped out the back exit, she knew something more important than a competition had happened in that hall today. Something harder to measure. Something that might ripple out in ways no one could predict. The next few days were strange. Maria went back to her regular routine, cleaning the hall in the early mornings, coming home to make dinner for Carmen, living her normal life. But word had spread somehow. The other cleaning staff looked at her differently, some with curiosity, some with a new kind of respect. One of the older women, Rosa, who'd worked at the hall for 20 years, pulled her aside. I heard what you did, Rosa said. I heard you played for all those fancy people and made them cry. Maria felt embarrassed. I just played a little. It wasn't a big deal. Don't do that. Don't make yourself small. What you did was brave. Rosa squeezed her arm. My daughter wants to learn music, but the lessons are so expensive. Maybe you could teach her sometime. I could pay you a little. Rosa, you don't need to. I want to, and I can afford a little. You'd be doing me a favor. It was the first of many such requests. The news had spread through the networks of working people who kept the concert hall running, the people nobody usually noticed. Within a week, 3 different families had asked if Maria would teach their children piano. On Thursday, Dr. Sullivan called. Maria, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I'm on my lunch break. It's fine. Good. I wanted to tell you about a conversation I had with the director of the Community Arts Center. They run programs for underprivileged kids teaching music, art, dance. They're looking for a piano instructor for their after-school program. 2 evenings a week, 4 hours total. The pay isn't much, but it's something. Maria's heart started beating faster. I don't have a teaching certificate. You don't need one for this program. You just need to be able to play and to care about the kids. I told her about you, about your story. She'd like to meet you. Would you be interested? Would she be interested? It was like asking if she wanted to breathe. Yes, Maria heard herself say. Yes, I'm interested. The meeting happened the next week. The center was in a neighborhood not far from where Maria lived. The director, a woman named Linda Chen, welcomed her warmly. Dr. Sullivan couldn't stop talking about your performance, Linda said. He sent me a video someone had recorded on their phone. I must have watched it 10 times. Someone recorded it? Maria felt panic rise. It's online? Just a short clip. But Maria, it's beautiful. You're incredibly talented. They talked for an hour about Maria's background, her experience, her approach to music. Linda seemed less interested in her formal training than in her philosophy, her understanding of what music could mean to people. Our kids come from tough situations, Linda explained. Poverty, trauma, unstable homes. We're not trying to train them to be concert pianists. We're trying to give them a way to express themselves, to process their feelings, to have something beautiful in their lives. That's what music should be, Maria said quietly. Exactly. That's why I want you for this job. You understand that. You've lived it. Maria started the following Monday, 6 students ages 8 to 14. They were shy at first, unsure about this middle-aged woman who spoke with an accent and had rough hands. But when she sat at the piano and played for them, really played, not simplified kids' music but real music, their faces changed. They leaned forward. They listened with their whole bodies. Music is not about being perfect, she told them on that first day. It's about being honest. It's about taking what you feel inside and letting it out through your fingers. Sometimes that's happy. Sometimes it's sad. Sometimes it's angry or scared or confused. All of that is okay. All of that is music. A small girl in the front row raised her hand. But what if we make mistakes? Maria smiled. Then you make mistakes. The piano doesn't judge you. Music doesn't judge you. It just lets you be. She still cleaned the concert hall in the mornings. She needed that income. But now twice a week she also taught. And slowly, carefully, she started playing more at home too. Carmen would sit and listen, doing her homework at the kitchen table while her mother played. One evening, after a particularly long piece, Carmen looked up. Mom, why did you stop playing for so long? Maria thought about how to answer. I didn't think I was allowed to anymore. I thought that since I couldn't be a professional, since I'd given up that path, I had to give up the music too. That doesn't make sense. No, Maria agreed. It doesn't. But sometimes when we lose something big, we punish ourselves by taking away the small joys too. Like we don't deserve them. Do you think you deserve them now? I'm learning to. 3 weeks after the competition, Maria got another call. This time it was Alexandra. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Dr. Sullivan, the young woman said. I wanted to tell you something. I've been working with my teacher, trying to apply what you said, about playing my own truth, not trying to fake emotions I haven't experienced yet. How's it going? It's hard, but it's also freeing. I performed last week, and for the first time in years, I actually enjoyed it. I wasn't thinking about the judges or my parents or winning. I was just trying to be honest. That's wonderful, Alexandra. I wanted to thank you, and also to ask if I could come watch you teach sometime, not to interfere, just to observe. I think I could learn a lot. Maria was surprised but touched. You're welcome anytime. A month became 2 months. Maria's student roster grew. Word of mouth brought more families. She couldn't take everyone, but she took as many as she could manage. Some paid a little.
Some couldn't pay at all.
She taught them anyway. Dr. Sullivan came to watch one of her classes.